Right. We can come to order for the work session of the Mayor and Council from March 5th, 2012. It is now 7 p.m. Let's have a stand for a moment of silent prayer. If Councilman Papaleo can lead us with a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and attend all meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. The Mayor and Council of the Borough of River Edge have noticed this meeting by publishing the date, time, and place in the Borough Hall, and notices have been sent to the Bergen Record and the Ridgewood News. The mission of the governing bodies to provide essential services through the establishment and implementation of public policy to safeguard our infrastructure, providing honest, courteous, and professional services, and establishing a sense of trust and accomplishment. Through research and prudent planning, we seek to minimize risks and improve our services. We are sensitive to the needs of the taxpayer while realizing that the governing body cannot be all things to all people, living within revenue constraints imposed by state mandates, economic conditions, and prevailing attitudes about taxation. All of the meeting is being recorded, both video and audio, and the meeting will be placed on our website. If you are a member of the public and wish to make a statement when the meeting is open to the public, and you wish to be both seen and heard, then please come forward to the microphone if you want to speak to the Mayor and Council. All right, can we have a roll call, Denise?
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Ford?
Here.
Councilman Porco?
Here.
Councilman Mignon?
Here.
Councilman Baldwin?
Here.
Councilman Papaleo?
Here.
And Mayor Scarzola?
Here. Mr. Negrin, do we have any administrative topics?
No, we do not. If I may, there is one, could have come up under Borough Administrator or new business. I'd like the council's permission to seek a professional for proposals to investigate whether there are any environmental issues with regard to the American Legion. This would be prudent to do this prior to obtaining proposals or bids on demolition of the building. We would want to know whether there's any asbestos underground storage tanks, lead paint, anything like that that should be removed in a special manner and treated before we go into a demolition stage. So I would just like permission to go out and seek proposals to bring before you to do a phase one and an investigation of whether there's anything there that we need to be concerned about.
Paul, was there a phase one done originally?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know.
No, Paul, there wasn't.
There wasn't?
No.
I know,
I just want to get it clear.
I want to get clear on this one.
I would make a motion that we give Alan permission to go get RFPs for phase one on the American Legion.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Will this incur a cost, Alan?
Yes, I would imagine there would be.
How much?
Have no idea. It'd probably be $5,000 to $10,000. I don't know. Ed, am I wrong in that? Less?
I would think less, but until you get the proposal.
Depending on what they find.
The phase one shouldn't involve any physical testing. It's just an inspection and a record search.
See, my concern is this. The building right now is in a very public spot in the town. It's not incurring any vandalism, doesn't seem to incur any vandalism. When we did the RFP to see how much it was going to be demolished, I wanted to know that because we were in such a tight fiscal place that spending money to tear down a building that really doesn't need to be torn down, it can just stay there. It's not a public hazard, it is locked, and it is in a highly trafficked area. I have a problem with that. I mean, we're making lots and lots of cuts to the town. We're looking at payroll, we're looking at operating budgets. In general, I would not be for tearing down a building that can just sit there at least for another year. Maybe we tear it down the year after that, or the year after that, or maybe the mayor has an idea about renovating it with volunteer labor from labor unions. But I have a concern about us spending money to tear down a building that doesn't need to be torn down. I'd like that to be a part of the record.
Al, you weren't here with the last Saturday meeting.
No.
When we went through our capital and we put aside $50,000 in the capital for the demolition. Most likely, it's not going to cost $50,000 to demolish, so I would think some of that money for the Phase 1 could probably come out of that $50,000, and then the additional money's left over for the demolition. So it's already in our budget, so I don't see any problem. So.
Alan, can you put money into capital to tear down and do a Phase 1?
I'll have to check with bond counsel to see if that kind of a preliminary expense can come out at this time.
So we don't know yet, right? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. I just want to put my position on the record that it's foolish to waste taxpayer money to study whether or not we're going to tear down a building that we haven't even gotten bids for to tear down, and we haven't even made a decision to tear it down. To just spend more money, more public money after that is just ridiculous. Ed?
But Mayor, I would make the point that even if you were to ultimately renovate the building, this is information you need to know. You need to know whether there's lead paint, you need to know whether there's asbestos in the building. So this is a prudent practice that should have been done when we bought the building, and it hadn't been done.
Except for if you're gonna decide, if there's a consensus someday to tear it down, then we'll have to go forward with this Phase 1. If there's a consensus someday to fix it up, we'll have to get an architect to do the Phase 1 anyway, so. It just seems foolish to spend the money now when the building's not costing us a penny. But anyway, we could take, if there's no more discussion, we could take a roll call vote.
Before we do this, if we're taking a roll call vote, we don't know if the money can come from budget or it has to come from somewhere else. Does that affect the vote, Alan?
Well, it's going to either come from capital or it's going to come from the engineering budget.
So what we're doing is voting to authorize it, not knowing where it's coming from.
No, I'm just asking for the ability to bring proposals back to you at this point. Then you can decide.
Would proposals cost us anything?
No.
Paul and then Johnny.
Just from a builder's point of view, Phase 1's got to be done no matter what. Whether it's done now or next year, I don't see any problem having it done. Like I said, it should have been done during the purchase of the property, which it wasn't. We go through this all the time when purchasing buildings and renovating them. Phase 1s are your first step before you take anything. So as far as the cost, it's pennies compared to what you're going to do to the building. As far as going forward. So this Phase 1 will carry over to whatever you do in the future.
So you're saying it won't go stale?
No. Your Phase 1 will carry over till 20 years from now. Saying that report said that there was no oil tank or this, it'll give you two, if that building starts falling apart, your Phase 1 will say, okay, this was in there, this was in there, this was in there. So it always is a report of what is in that building, what's in the ground, what's around it. And it basically it's a legal matter.
Okay.
Whether, you buy a building, all of a sudden you find oil tanks in there. That's why you have Phase 1, so you do your certain searches on it. So I don't see a problem doing it right now, which should have been done.
So I just want to understand, I don't want to cut off Johnny, but you're saying that this would have to be done whether we renovate it or tear it down, and it doesn't go stale?
No.
Correct.
Okay.
It's an assessment of the existing conditions and whether there are environmental liability, so to speak, whether there's lead paint, whether there's asbestos in the building, whether there's an oil tank, things that will affect either the demolition of the building, or if you were to renovate it, those are still things you would need to take under consideration. If you have lead paint, obviously, if you're going to scrape the walls or something, you need to know that. So there's certain level of precautions that the contractors need to take to deal with lead paint. Same if there was asbestos or if there was an underground tank. So it's basically a due diligence effort to give you an overall assessment of the environmental liabilities associated with the property.
Does it have oil heat?
We don't think so, no. But no one's ever
Asked.
no one's ever looked.
Yeah.
Did a record search to see if there was a tank, or that's what the phase one is supposed to do.
All right. Johnny?
When we discussed this at the budget meeting on that Saturday, these concerns about us not being able to use the money for these reasons didn't come up. So if they are not able to be used for these particular items, then I would move that we remove them from our capital items, because I don't see why I voted for these items to see what we're going to do and knock it down, not for renovations to the existing building. So if that's what that capital line's going to end up being, then I'm not for that, and I would move that be removed from capital then.
All right, you can't make a motion when there's another motion pending on the table. Kathleen?
Just at the budget meeting, it just says $50,000 for American Legion. It didn't specify exactly what it was for.
Right. It's unallocated at this point. All right. Any further discussion? Denise, roll call. This is the motion to obtain an RFPs for a Phase 1 assessment of the building. Assuming it was never done before.
Of Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Quartz?
Yes.
Councilman Parker?
Yes.
Councilman Mignon?
Yes.
Councilman Scardeloni?
Yes.
Councilman Papaleto?
Yes. All right, for discussion, number one, borough
Mayor,
website.
I still have my motion that I'd want to get it out of capital if we're not going to be using it to knock down the building, or...
We haven't had an answer. We need to, Alan needs to research whether or not we could use money in capital for this purpose.
Right. My motion is if it can't be used for this purpose, then it shouldn't be in capital.
Well, don't
Or-
Alan has to answer the question first.
Okay, we could revisit it then, but I don't see what the difference is.
All right, number one, borough websites, linking local groups.
Mayor, we had a request last week from an organization that would like to create a link with our website. This raised the larger question of having some sort of parameters or structure for evaluating groups that would like to link to the website, to make sure that the mayor and council, is aware of it and approves these particular links. We put in front of you tonight the message board procedures, which perhaps you can use as some sort of a model or a template to design something similar for these website links, if that's what you want to do. So there are priorities or different categories here. There is a procedure for submitting their requests, and a form. So we could use this as some sort of a model if the mayor and council are interested in moving forward with creating links to many of the organizations that we have in town and other entities that might want to work off of the borough website.
All right, any discussion on this issue? Kathleen?
I think we have to include every organization. I don't think we can just have, we would have to reach out to just about every organization in order to include them. I don't think it should just be a few. We'd have to include all.
Well, what about the, it says auxiliary organizations associated with the borough, and then it says voluntary organizations, and then it shows all of, any committees or anything like that that have websites, and then it also includes the schools, religious institutions, and religious service organizations. Is there anything you'd like to add to the list? I could think right offhand that if we're going to have links to our website, it should link to, the business community as well. So it should link to any, Chamber of Commerce that we have, that is involved in the town. Any, if there's a local realtors board, if there's, businesses in town, they should be able to link to. Johnny?
I don't agree with that at all. We're not an advertising center. This is to get information out to the public. It's going to be who's going to support that? Who's going to maintain it? New businesses come in, they want to be added. Businesses leave, we have to keep it updated. We have enough trouble, keeping it updated. Our staff is doing the updates themselves to add it for businesses and things like that. I just don't think it makes sense.
So if a business comes in town and they go on our website to find out about us, there shouldn't be a link to the Chamber of Commerce? No?
No, not unless the Chamber of Commerce is going to be, no, because then we couldn't distinguish between other places. That's the problem. You can't really distinguish between the two. So somebody else comes up and says, well, we want to be on there as well. Now, who's going to add it? Who's going to maintain it? That's work that needs to be done. We have other things that we're doing. We've got the videos. We've got our own updates.
Kathleen?
I just think that's more work.
I just think it would be encouraging for businesses to have a link. I mean, everything to help the businesses to stay afloat and, it's not, we'd figure out something.
Then I think we should talk about charges and stuff like that, which I don't think makes sense. But again, we would have to maintain it, and it's not going to be an easy thing. It's not it's straightforward. People are going to call constantly. Oradell may have their chamber, or now I think it's Riverdale together, but another business that comes in wants to be on there, but they're not on the chamber. I mean, I don't know how you distinguish, so I'm not for it.
Al, thank you. I would, first of all, this was triggered and on our agenda because the Historic Commission wanted to add a link to the website. So it wasn't anything like the message board or anything like that. It was one of our commissions wanted to be able to link up to our website.
This is a different one, I think. This is a different request that came in.
Another request came in?
Yeah, this was separate from that
Okay.
one, but that one is also...
I thought that was part of this.
No, this is a separate one.
But I wouldn't have a problem with a link to the Chamber of Commerce. But as to individual businesses, you're going to get to a point where you may not like that particular business. And then you're in the market of distinguishing between one business and another. You may like the bagel shop, but you don't like the gold buying place. You could have a bail bonds place move into the south end of town. You may not want that on your website. There may be businesses that you deem unacceptable to have on your website, and now you're in the business of having to debate the merits of an individual business's practice. So I don't think that's something that we should be involved in. The Chamber of Commerce is a separate thing. It's an organization. They have a website. You want to run a link to the Chamber of Commerce, I have no problem with that. But individual businesses, I think it's just a slippery slope that we don't need to go down.
All right. Tom?
I would have to agree with Al. I definitely think we should put the Chamber of Commerce on. I think that's a good organization, but individual businesses could get very tricky. There's one or two businesses already in town that I don't know if we would, want to have a link to the borough website. Not to say there's anything wrong, but, we just, that might create a controversy. And I don't think that we would be free to parse and say, well, your business we like and your businesses we're not. I think that would just lead us into litigation. So I think the Chamber of Commerce is a great idea, but businesses in general, I now hearing what Al said, I think he's right.
Paul?
I'm mostly concerned with the technical end of it, as far as the upkeep on it. Does that cause, I gotta go to you with it, does it cause a problem to have them on it? Is it Is it something that, does somebody have to watch this website all the time? Because we originally went after this website was to be maintenance-free, and that Denise can do it, on her lunchtime, and as far as putting information in, I'm only kidding. And,
Denise, I didn't know your lunch was that long.
No, I'm saying there's enough work in that one area. I don't know, I'm not a computer guy. I don't know the linkage and how that works. I don't know. So this is really hard for me to decide on, okay, bring them in. Does it make more work for the borough itself, or is it something that's conducive to running its own, you're a tech guy.
Setting up a link is not a problem. That's not the issue. That's no problem at all.
Then I'm missing the issue.
It's the upkeep of it. So, how do you distinguish? So if it was businesses, it would be a problem, because you're going to have a lot of them coming on and leaving all the time. So that's an issue, because there's a lot of them in town. So what's going to happen? This business is going to go out. They're not going to call you and say, get my, link off of there. So you're going to have to constantly be proactive and researching and saying, okay, this is out of business, let's take it off. This is, people are going to call up, can you add me? So that's upkeep, because, constantly getting these calls is going to be a problem. The chamber wouldn't be as much of a problem at all. My problem with that is, how do you distinguish between them and potentially other organizations, groups, or whatever? I mean, groups is one thing, just like the message board, but when it comes to like the chamber or, another business that's not in the chamber, I don't know if then you're forcing people to go into the chamber to be on there. I don't know.
What is it doing? I mean, is it just a little
it's just a link.
icon that says...
It just takes you to their website. It takes you to their website.
10 seconds.
So it's easy to set up, and if we said, okay, it's going to be the chamber and that's it, that would be one thing. But if we're going to say that we're opening this up, it's maintenance, Denise is constantly going to get calls about, put mine up there, our website changed, can you change this? It's going to be maintenance.
But the chamber is going to have to
Update it.
themselves, as long as we're just going to open up a link to it.
Right.
Right.
That's it.
It's up to them.
If that's the only place, then that's fine. But the question is, will that be the only place, or will we constantly get calls for updates to these pages?
They'll have to go to the chamber.
Okay. So I think that what we should probably do is refer this issue to your committee, you and Kathleen, to come up with, to use message board procedures as a template, come up with a description of who you want to allow linkage from on the borough website. Yes.
Well, I'd be willing to contact a lot of the organizations and see if they wanted to be linked, and then
Well,
to take the information.
If they have a website, they might not even have a website. I don't think, beautification doesn't have a website, right?
Yes, they're linked actually on our website.
Oh, they are?
Mhm.
Beautiful.
I believe Historic also has a quick link, just a little bio.
I think they want to put videos.
So don't we already have that on there? Is it like the list of all our departments and stuff?
Departments will be
Okay.
separate.
All right, so is there a motion to refer this to the Technology Committee, come up with the procedures for linking groups to our website?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? All right, good. Next, we have the bylaw proposals. You should have in front of you 2 sets of proposals. One that Councilman Bartoloni submitted, one that I submitted. I suggest that we review these, give them to Sam, have Sam review them, have a long discussion over the details of each one, and try to reach a consensus or vote on a particular version.
Mayor, question.
Yeah.
Do we have to vote on a version, or can we say we have this version and then we make changes to the version?
I think what happened is, and Al can correct me, we had a couple of meetings with the bylaw subcommittee, and Al proposed a draft at the very beginning. I proposed another draft based upon a template that we have from New Milford, that's the same form of government. We agree on, I don't know, Al may say 80%, I may say 75%, we agree on the majority of the proposed bylaws. There are certain sections that we disagree on, that we have no consensus. So,
But my question is, do we have to choose one in its entirety, or the other in its entirety? Or can we, as a council, say, well, we like pieces here and there? I mean, are we tied into a single vote for one or the other, or are we allowed to make amendments as it goes?
I can only tell you that it's on tonight for discussion, not any official action. Sam is not here to give us his legal opinion about some of the provisions in the proposed bylaws. So I think we should hear from Sam, who's the parliamentarian and who's our borough attorney, on both drafts, and get his opinion. We can discuss it. I'm sure that once we get into the nitty-gritty, it's going to be long, and we're going to have a long and detailed discussion. It's going to take up a lot of time. That's why we had the subcommittee. Paul?
Did Sam, he didn't see any of the copies?
He has seen them.
He has seen them?
He has seen them.
All right. So we just table this until he comes back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's seen them, and obviously he should be here when, any final decision is made. But if I can, I think the mayor's correct in that we're about 80% there together. Some stylistic differences. I put the Borough Council as the first article as opposed to the second. The mayor obviously put it first. The mayor first and the council second. And there is that bit of a tone throughout the two. The largest distinction is who appoints the committees that we as council members are on, and who appoints the liaisonships for the individual council members. The mayor is of the position, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, that the mayor has that authority to appoint the liaisonships and, to a certain extent, what committees we as council members are on. I take the position that that is exclusively our responsibility to appoint ourselves as a co-equal branch of government. I don't see how the executive has the authority to tell the legislative branch, which we are, what committees or liaisonships we should or should not be on. That's the fundamental difference we have. So it's not just so everybody knows, it's not a partisan difference, it's an executive legislative difference. So obviously, as part of the legislative branch, I have one perspective. I think as part of the executive branch, the mayor has a different perspective. I think the draft that I've submitted follows in line with what historically we have done as a council here. The council members have appointed themselves to the committees and the liaisonships. It has not been the mayor who's appointed that, and I think the draft that I've submitted preserves that, and I think this changes it. So that's largely the differences in opinion that we have. Some other changes, just so when you're reading it, I can't speak to the mayor's, but I'll just tell you for mine. It does move, it eliminates one meeting a month. It would be the third work session of the month would be eliminated. There would be 2 meetings each month, a work session and a regular meeting. Also, it would change the format of the meeting a little bit. Again, just a minor revision, but it's something that I think is important. Our boards of ed do this. It opens the meeting to the public on any issue on the agenda right after the borough administrator's topics. This gives the public an opportunity to be heard before we take any action on anything. I just think that's a good government issue. Let the public be heard before we do anything. And then, beyond that, really that's just about the only differences and additions. I think it maintains what we've been doing as a borough. So, that's my 2 cents on my version. So.
All right, I could say that Al's basically, correct that are probably 80% together. Stylistically, Article 1 in my proposed set is the mayor because it's the mayor and council. Article 2 is the council. In Article 2, there is a provision that says that the council at its annual meeting can establish any committees that it wants. So I included that at Al's suggestion. Where it does differ is that in my version, the liaisons are substitutes for the mayor, because as the appropriate authority, I'm the liaison to every department. So in my version, which is the same version that's used across the river, the mayor at the annual meeting appoints who the liaison is to the different departments, and then the liaisons communicate with that department. Just the way we've been doing it now, except that the mayor would appoint the liaisons at the beginning of the year instead of the fighting amongst the council members as to who's going to be the liaison for what. My proposed version also includes an Article 8, which is exclusively all about the committees and indicates which committees are appointed by the council, which committees are appointed by the mayor, which committees are appointed by the mayor with the consent of council. So it squares all that away. I have an article regarding standing committees. There's another article regarding the passage of ordinances. There's another article regarding the payment of bills and procedures. And there's a final article about any amendments. So take a look at both versions, see what we can agree on, what we can get Sam's opinion on various different articles in the bylaws, and then we can move forward. Anything else, Sam?
No.
Okay.
No. It'll be an interesting legal sort of and philosophical debate.
It's really, and Al's right, it's really about it's not really political as it is a separation of powers issue. Kathleen?
I had the opportunity to read out, and I just had one question about Article 5, Section 6, and it says, "The mayor shall not engage in debate without permission of the council."
Yeah.
Is that something that's common?
Yes, it is. It's actually a point of Robert's Rules of Procedure. Typically, the individual who's running the meeting, which is the mayor in this case, does not engage in debate, and that was also included in our original bylaws.
And then there's just in Section 8 of Article 2, there was just a typo.
Yeah, I think I changed that.
Okay. Can we move on to number 3, the 2012 capital budget? After our last meeting, I got a call from, I don't know, no, it wasn't a call, it was an email.
From me.
I got an email from Al indicating some concern about the present condition of the DPW tree truck. Al can go into detail regarding that, but because of that, and because Alan needs some direction to include it in the capital budget, I think there was some consensus reached, although there were no violations of any Open Public Meetings Act, that we'd like to revisit this issue. So I'll open it up for discussion. Al?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, in essence, I asked for this to be looked at again. Last Tuesday, I went down to the Department of Public Works. Actually, I just had something I needed to drop off and recycle. And as I was dropping them off, the two gentlemen who were operating the tree truck happened to pull out of the yard. And they stopped because they saw me carrying these old helium tanks that I needed to see if it could be recycled. And I started talking to them about the tree truck. And I asked them about a comment that Chief Caridi made at the last meeting regarding diesel fumes coming into the cabin of the truck. and whether or not it was a problem and what the situation was. And they did mention to me that, yeah, it's a problem, that you smell the exhaust. In the winter, when the windows are up, it does back up into it. The exhaust is right behind the cabin. It's not at the end of the truck, it's right, it's right behind the cabin, and that is an issue. And also, they said, truck works, but it's on its last legs. And this was, not just what John was telling us, but this is the guys who are actually in the truck every day, telling me this. And so, the one guy, I'm not going to mention any names, just said, when he's going up Tenney Avenue getting out of the yard, he's got, his foot is literally through the floor trying to get the truck up the hill. Now, I know John said, the fuel injectors need to be cleaned, and that's, anybody who's had a bad fuel injector will tell you, hit a hill, you're not going anywhere, but the truck is most likely on its last legs. Given what we're looking at for next year in terms of capital, and what we have this year, I thought it prudent to revisit this issue and go forward with the truck purchase at this time. And that's why I asked for it to be back on the agenda.
Mayor, just a point of clarification.
Yes.
What you'd be voting on tonight, or what your motion would be, is just to include the down payment money into the 2012 budget. The actual purchase and what you're purchasing, that would come later on. But that's what you're considering tonight, is the $12,500 going back into the budget for down payment purposes.
Kathleen?
I actually went down to DPW and examined the truck too, the same day, I guess maybe a little after you did, and it is in terrible condition. They're holding the front of it together with signs, and you can see like the asbestos or whatever that stuff is, the fiberglass coming through by the engine. So I would agree, it's in bad shape.
Well, looks like we have a motion, and we may have a second.
I'll make the motion to put the DPW tree truck in the capital for this year, 2012.
The deposit money, right?
Yes, the deposit money.
I would second that.
All right, let's have a roll call. Wait a minute.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Any further discussion? I forgot to, Johnny. Sorry, Johnny.
Just when we were talking about this, I said that, I wouldn't mind entertaining it, but I thought that, we were at pretty high level already of our capital expenditures, and what I wanted to do was kind of prioritize some of the items on there and maybe take some of them off to accommodate for the tree truck. But now what we're doing is we're just adding more capital, and again, we're already at 1.5 million annually in bonds and interest. So, I mean, I think that we do need it, and I would love to revisit it, but I don't think it should be revisited like this. I think there are other items that could have came off, that could have held off one more year, and this could have gone on. So that's why I have a problem with this.
Kathleen?
I believe at the budget meeting, when we were talking about these projects, at the bottom of the list were a lot of little amounts or smaller amounts, and Mr. Porco said that you wanted to deal with that and get rid of some of those, but then eventually those were put through. So those numbers were looked at and then agreed upon.
They were, and the truck came out. My point was, if we're going to put the truck in, we should revisit these items, like the generator at the fire company 2, that we already have. We're building out a generator here. We have a generator at fire company 1, but we're going to spend another 40,000 or so, 39,000 down at that firehouse. We've got 45,000 for trees, which could, offset a lot of this truck. And that's just what I thought we should prioritize, some of those items.
Paul?
I have to agree with Johnny. Again, we put those votes at the end, after the tree truck, we'll pull out. I like the tree truck back in there, because I agree with Alphonse, and even talking to John Lynch about it. That's something that should go in there. I think some of the smaller items that we did vote on, maybe revisit those, pull some of those out, and then put them back in down the road, because just thinking, just after that report, I just think that's the way we should go.
Kathleen?
We put in the budget, I believe, $90,000 for the DPW roof and $130 for the library. And John said those two could be put off, so that would make up for the money for this truck.
We've
But then we're
gone
gonna spend
over
money
this.
on the DPW and
We've gone over that before. That money was allocated in a prior year's capital budget. It's not money that we can remove from this year's capital budget because it's already allocated in a prior budget.
Unless you're saying that we're not gonna do the DPW roof or the library roof,
Well,
that would be a different story.
We can agree on that at any point at any point of time. But right now, there's a motion, there's a second, only regarding the tree truck. We've had discussion on it. You gotta take an up or down vote on that item. If at any point during new business or old business, if you wanna reallocate existing funds, and there's a motion and a second, we can discuss it and take a vote on that particular issue. Let's have a roll call, Denise.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Ford?
Yes, with revisiting the other issues.
Councilman Porco?
Not like this, no.
Councilman Mignon?
Yes, but we're just voting on the down payment, and I do believe that before we go for the full purchase, we need to look at all the capital items again.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Yes, and I would agree with Ed. It's in the budget, and we can certainly revisit all the capital items before we actually accept any bids, so.
Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Okay. Down payment for the tree truck is in the budget.
Mayor, there's another part to this request, and this is a request for clarification. It does not require any additional funding. What I thought I would like to do is to take the money that's allocated for Voorhees and also add to it the 2 catch basins for Elm Avenue. It makes sense because Voorhees involves installing some catch basins. There's this work. Do it all together as one bid, and likely we can fit it within the existing funding that we already have in place on the capital budget.
All right, do you need a motion on that?
Yeah, I would like that because it was not discussed that way before. I've looked through the old ordinances, and we don't have anything that would address these 2 catch basins on Elm.
So moved.
Second.
All right, let's have a roll call.
What, I don't know.
Wait a
Which
minute.
item is this for?
Before having a roll call, we'll open it up for
Clarification.
discussion because Johnny's...
I just need clarification on that piece.
This is the Voorhees Avenue storm system improvements. We have $100,000 allocated, and I'm proposing that you add the 2 catch basins that were discussed for Elm Avenue, where we are having a ponding problem on Elm at Voorhees and Manning, I believe.
And how much is that gonna add?
Well, it's been estimated to be about $10,000 to $15,000 for those 2, but I'm not adding anything to the existing $100,000. I'm suggesting we bid it out altogether and see if it will fit within the $100,000. I'm optimistic that it will.
Okay, now I got it.
Any further discussion on adding the Elm Street catch basins to the Voorhees Avenue drainage issues? All right, let's have a roll call.
Councilman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Porco?
Yes.
Councilman Mignon?
Yes.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Yes.
And Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The last 2 items we could discuss together. Earlier, or last week, I emailed everybody a spreadsheet showing all the grants that are available to be applied to for the next 90-day cycle of grant applications. Maybe some of the council members had an opportunity to look at the spreadsheet, to come up with any ideas that they had regarding grants this year. And along those lines, we had a presentation from Capital Alternatives that had previously done some grant consultant work for the borough. I think today we got an email from Capital Alternatives indicating that, the grant season was coming up and we should make a decision one way or the other whether or not we're going to have a grant consultant this year, and so we can begin the application process. So I'll open it up for discussion. Good idea, bad idea? Do we want to go for grants? Do we want to not go for grants then?
I don't have an issue with contracting with them to be a grant consultant. My issue comes down to the oversight and how individual decisions will be made with respect to each grant. Like I said the last time when they were here, one thing I don't want is them to propose a grant and then have it only represent, say, 10% of the total cost of a project. We're going to have to wind up bonding to spend for the balance. So I don't know how administratively we were going to handle this, but if they were going to say we're going to go for a police grant for $100,000 and the project is going to cost us $100,000, I don't have a problem with it. But if they say we're going to go for a $100,000 grant and the project is $500,000, we need to know that before they pursue a grant. So I don't know how administratively this was held in the past, or whether Alan was involved, or...
I know from dealing with capital alternatives in the past, once we signed a contract with them, they would review all of the available grants. They would come before us and make a presentation as to the grants that they thought were most suitable for the borough, and whether they think that we stood a good chance of obtaining them. And then we would have a vote on which grants to sign off for, which grant applications to sign off for. So, you know, it wouldn't be done, there wouldn't be any executive decision that I would be making.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I just want to know what the oversight process was going to be, because I've seen this happen in other locations.
Alan?
It's been my experience also that they request that the mayor and council come up with targeted areas, that you develop your priorities, your targets. They would also like to know who they can work with as a means of communication, whether it be a subcommittee or the mayor or the administrator. They'd like that designated as well. So they do want some ideas to what your priorities are and what your targets are for these grants before they come back and make recommendations.
Any other discussion?
I think we should, if we're going to decide what they're going to apply for in our name, if we're going to be setting the priorities, then to me it seems like this is an excellent proposal and we should move forward, because to let money that the town could benefit from pass through our fingers, that it doesn't make sense to me. To bring in a grant proposal company that doesn't charge us anything unless we get the grants that we direct them to get, the grants that they look for according to our priorities. I think that's outstanding, personally.
All right, you'll find a resolution on the 8 o'clock meeting to enter into an agreement with Capital Alternatives. If we want to do that by consent when we get there, if we want to pull it out for a separate vote, it's up to council's prerogative. That takes care of the topics for discussion. We have 2 items on the work session consent agenda, the DMOLA month proclamation and the resolution to appoint Alan as management representatives for communication with the auditor and the finance committee as the governing body's representative. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Any council reports now, or do you want to wait till the public meeting? No?
Yeah,
All right.
we can wait till
Wait till the
comments.
public meeting? Sure. All right, I don't have any report right now, because I see that members of the police department are here. We'd like to hear from them regarding the First Responders Memorial. So, you guys can come up.
You know you don't get enough paperwork, so I'm with Kurt behind it. You know there's something.
Yeah. I don't have enough. Good enough. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Mayor, we didn't come up with the actual drawings. We're still up in the air of
a definitive location, right, until I ask the designer to come up with the actual design. I don't think it's fair for him to do his designs if we're going to move the location from one to another, to have him do multiple, double work, triple work, or quadruple work. But when you or the council decide on where the exact location for us could be, from that point forward, we'll give you whatever plans you desire.
I was under the impression that we were down to 2 possible locations. One here outside the public safety building, and the other one at the library.
That's correct, but like I said, we went with 2 different designs. I just don't want him to do double work, and we would have had the plans today, but he's inundated with his work now that the weather's starting to change early. But they're getting their own work, it's putting money in their pocket, and I can't ask them to do triple work if
Okay.
taken away from their jobs.
Is the memorial going to look the same if it's in either spot?
I don't think it'll be varying much, but we're going to delete the water feature. If we can revisit for cost effectiveness, it's just out of the ballpark for us.
Okay.
Which will take away the maintenance cost too, for anybody to maintain it, winterize it, and fill it up.
Before we get into council comments, does the PBA have a preference as to location?
We're just like a piece of land.
Okay. All right. Now, I'll open it up to council for discussion. If members of council have a preference as a location. I think Paul had his hand up first.
Yeah, I been working with you guys on this a little bit here, and I was, our comments have been to put it in front of the public safety building because it is a 9/11 memorial, so it does represent the police and the fire department that was out there. I think that's the best thing. I'd like them to go forward tonight and make a motion to give them that piece of property in the front and let them move forward with get the project moving, because there's really another place. I mean, the library has its own memorials, and I don't want to interfere with that down there. I think that's its own setup. I think it's done properly. Going forward, I think the public safety building is probably the best for it. And the more we delay, the more it's going to sit there. And I just think that given the okay tonight to open up the opportunity to start running funds for it. So I'd like to put a motion on the table to use the public safety building.
Second. So there's a motion and a second for the public safety building. Now we can open it up for discussion. Kathleen?
I think the library is a perfect spot. I mean, it's already established. I think that would be excellent to put it there.
Mayor?
Yeah.
The only problem we have with the library is it's too sensitive of an area right now. We already have the garden there, we have other objects of 9/11, and one is, it doesn't represent the police and the fire department. It doesn't represent the OEM or anybody who was at in that particular case, as far as 9/11. The library is a public place, it's a library. They used a couple areas there already. I don't think we should overload it. This represents who was actually there at that time. I think this is a public safety building. It was the people who represent public safety in the state, in New York City, in the outer boroughs who went to help. I just think it's just a proper area. Any place I go, any borough hall I go to when I get permits, most of the 9/11 stuff is done right at the public safety building. So I think that to overload the library again with another piece of with another memorial, I think would be too much. I think let's spread the memorials out. I think this would be a perfect spot for it.
And
Yeah, I agree with Paul. It's a emergency services memorial, and it would make sense to have it at the public safety building. And I think it would look very nice in the front. It would be a more visible reminder. You can almost probably see it from coming down Kinderkamak, and I think it'll be very visible and a good location. And it's something people should see, and I think I would endorse having it here.
Tom?
I'd like to explain why I seconded the motion. I also feel it should be here. I think the PBA has sponsored this, they've gone their way. I know that the fire department's also very excited about it. I think the memorial at the library is an outstanding location for a personal memorial to remember the people in town who have died. It's just a personal thing. I don't want to encroach upon that. I think that location is for the members of our town who died. whereas this location would be remembering all the valiant service that so many of our service and emergency service people did. I like the fact that there are two locations, one for private reflection of lives lost from the town, and another for a reflection of those who lost their lives in service of others. So that's just, it's a highly personal thing. I thought this was an outstanding idea from the very beginning. I want to thank Sam for doing an excellent job with his assessment of, whether we can use the artifact given, the cutout. I'm a full support of this. I really believe in this, and I also think this would be a better location.
I just have one question for Sam. Sam, since this involves borough property, can we do it can we vote on it now, or do you think it would be better to have a formal resolution on the agenda?
I think we're better off with a formal resolution on the agenda. I think it's a better way of handling it. I also think the decision should be made also with reference to the cross etch out, which we had discussed. I mean, that should be, I don't feel it violates the Establishment Clause, although I would hate to see a controversy arise out of that, which would then, I think, kind of divert the attention from the memorial and focus on things that may not necessarily be with reference to the memorial. I think you have to really think through that. But I don't feel it's a violation of the Establishment Clause. I looked at the issue very carefully. But I think I would do it by way of a formal resolution. Also locating it, and I guess there would be a design, so that should be part of that resolution also.
Yeah. All right. Paul, why don't you just change your motion to make this a formal resolution with, what are the
A
other...
schematic, there should be a
Yeah.
schematic, a detail that's part of that resolution, so that we know what we've done.
Yeah, so we can approve something like this.
All right, so let's make a formal resolution, we'll put it on the agenda, and then we can have a blueprint of it. I forward the motion.
Okay. Second. Let's have a roll call.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Porco?
Yes.
Councilman McMillan?
Yes.
Councilman Barberoni?
Yes.
And Councilman Papalato?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I think you got a location.
Thank you.
And can I,
Yeah.
just, is the PBA accepting donations from the public also for this, or what is the...
Just to let the council know that we have a benefit scheduled for April 18th at St. Peter's. It's, last year we did a benefit concert for Amy Zhang, a little girl who had to have these surgeries outside the box where medical wasn't covering it. So we donated the money from that event strictly to her family for her medical expenses. Everything, the proceeds from our benefit April 18th, Wednesday night, will be going towards the memorial. And we are accepting it through the PBA. And I think one more thing for the mayor and council, we'll get out of your hair. I'm sure he wants to get out of here. We're looking to see if we can possibly, when everything's approved, to maybe if we could ourselves to cut down whatever shrubbery's out in front and maybe put like a thermometer like it's normally done for like charity events to see where the funds are, like a where we are, like dollar amount.
Like a blood drive thing.
Yeah, like with the future home of the 9/11 memorial or the First Responder Memorial.
It's a good idea.
It's only going to be up a few months, right? Yeah.
If that.
All right. Anybody?
No.
No?
You know, if there was any legalities or anything with,
No, we'll put that, we'll include that in the resolution.
Just bring us a sketch of that, too.
Absolutely, as soon as we get to it,
Yeah.
we'll forward to,
All right, thanks.
thank you.
All right. Any unfinished business? Johnny?
Yeah, we spoke last week about unfinished business, about the fire siren. Academy Electric is ready to do the work by turning on the Main Street fire siren. And they can also do all in the same day. They can shut down the Elm, which was the agreed option between the citizens and the fire department. They would only have to rent the truck once, as opposed to having us rent it twice, to have them come back to shut off the other siren. So I'd like to put forward the motion that we do that work all in one shot. It's a motion.
I'd like to second it.
All right, let's open it up for discussion. Where did
You went to.
Councilman Papaleo went?
Mayor, I have to interrupt and bring to everyone's attention that it's time for our public meeting, and this topic will have to be carried until the conclusion of the public meeting.
All right.
We haven't opened to the public, though?
We don't have time.
Well, we're going to open to the public at the...
There won't be a vote right now.
When we go into the next meeting. Before a vote's taken, we'll open to the public. All right. What's going on in work session? I thought...
Fire siren.
No, it was, John called first,
Right.
I called the second, but I'm pulling my second because I want to talk to...
Paul withdrew his second on the motion.
Withdrew my second because I want to have a conversation and get this handled on the outside.
Okay. Now, do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, Denise?
Yes.
Yeah.